I would say that the basic position that you should take is not how to be funny or not funny, but how to be generous, how to be warm, how to be friendly, and how to be fun, rather than how to be funny. Because for me, being funny is just a means to achieve those other things. That I use humour in order to build relationships with people, in order to keep things light and fun and not too serious. And that's what humour is for me. So think of it as a tool to achieve those other things. And you should be looking to, be nice and be friendly and be good fun rather than just be funny. So again, it's about the attitude. And I would say if you have the attitude of like being willing to generally look at the funny side of things with other people, then that's probably going to be a good way to socialise and build relationships with them.
Welcome back to the Clark and Miller English podcast. And if it's your first time listening, welcome. It's good to have you here. So, yes, today, as usual, I am going to make the introduction quick, or at least I'm going to say I'm going to make the introduction quick and then probably end up with a long introduction. But just two things to say before we start listening to the wise words of Luke. So first of all, we have reached over 500 followers on Spotify. This is a cause of celebration. Thank you very much for following us on Spotify. It's great. It's a good landmark. You start 500's a number when you start looking online and people are saying, how to get 500 followers on Spotify in 1 week. And, you get these sorts of articles. So obviously 500 is quite a good thing. I don't know, do I? Is 500 a lot? I think it's a lot. Anyway, it's a nice number to have, and thank you very much for following us on Spotify. If you're not following us on Spotify, well, you know what to do. Let us reach 1,000. Why not? These numbers are fun to follow. But really, thank you very much. It's great to have to know that there are so many people out there listening and hopefully enjoying the podcast episodes. That's it. We're celebrating here at Clark and Miller HQ. Thanks to you. Secondly, basically, we're going to talk to Luke today. We're going to talk to Luke from Luke's English podcast. I say we, but I talk to Luke, not you, I'm afraid. You're listening to Luke. But yeah, Luke's great. He's very enigmatic. He's very charming. He's got some very interesting views on comedy, which is the topic we talk about today, and lots of other things, especially about language learning and how to communicate. Very quickly, we basically talk about our own, one of our favorite topics. Both of us are very interested in British comedy. Sitcoms and TV shows and things like that. So we talk about why we laugh. It's a stranger answer than you might think. We don't just laugh when we find things funny. We talk about jokes, how we tell jokes, how you can liberate yourself by being weird, how Boris Johnson uses comedy, usually to win elections and to appear harmless. And we also talk about a tour, which is completely irrelevant, but we do. We talk about a tour and what it is and how it relates to Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. And lots more, sitcoms, all sorts of stuff. I'm going to stop talking about what we talk about and just let you listen to us talking about it. So here we are, Luke from Luke's English podcast. We're talking about comedy. Off we go. So, yes, I'm with Luke Thompson from Luke's English podcast. Hey, Luke, how's it going?
Very well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast. Very nice to be interviewed. Yeah. And how are you this morning, Gabriel?
Pretty good. I'm at my parents' house, so I'm in a lazy mood. Yeah.
Yeah, I know how you feel.
Good, generally good. We're off to Glastonbury after this.
What, the festival?
Not the festival, no. The Crystal Central town of retired hippies.
And Standing Stones.
Standing Stones. We're going to go to the tour. I think that's like a clock tower or something. Or no, a tower.
Is it not a sort of natural point where then some kind of structure has been built on top. Like it's a hilltop with some stones gathered on the top. Is that not a tor? You have lots of them in the southwest.
Is that what a tor is? Because I think this
so.
one. So it's the mound with the thing, because the thing in this case is a sort of tower.
Right. Yeah. Made of like stones.
Yeah, it's a stone tower.
Yeah. On
Something
the top,
to do with. Yeah.
I often imagine sort of areas. Is it in Devon, where you've got sort of a hilly area, and it's almost like a valley, and then you've got various little outcroppings of rock, sort of hilltops, and on those you've got these little sort of towers of standing stones. I think those are tors.
Cool. Okay.
Maybe once upon a time there were fires on the top of them or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
It's very Lord of the Ringsian.
Yeah, it's old stuff. And I think this one in particular has like Gandalf and King Arthur connotations to it, something.
Yeah. That sort of thing.
Magical part of England. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very magical. A lot of King Arthur and sort of enchanted swords and things like that.
Indeed, yeah. All the stuff that everyone thinks about when they think of England. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I thought we could get started today with... we're talking about comedy today. I noticed from listening to your podcast episodes that we probably... I think we share a similar taste in comedy, and it's something I'm definitely geeky about. It's like language, then music, then British sitcoms are kind of my three things. So I thought like it might be fun just to pick your brains about this, and also relate it to language learning and how it can be relevant for people learning English.
Yeah, sure.
If at all.
That sounds very much like my what would you call it? My wheelhouse. Is that a phrase?
Yes. You were avoiding cup of tea. I like that.
It is my cup of tea as well, but it's my wheelhouse in the sense that it's like the thing that I know about, because I often, talk about those things. So that's my field.
Yes, like this is sort of the pub conversation stuff, right?
Yeah, the topic of conversation that I feel quite comfortable with, the whole British comedy and learning English. Yeah.
Yes, me too. So I thought it would be great to take advantage of that. First, let's just start really abstractly. I guess you've already answered the question, but have you ever thought much about comedy theory? Like analysing and abstractifying the comedy? Because you had a background in stand-up, right?
Yeah, I do stand-up. That's right. So I've been doing stand-up for nearly the same amount of time I've been doing the podcast. So it's like about 12 years. In fact, it will, for the stand-up, it will be 12 years in October. That's when I did my first gig, sort of October 12 years ago. But in terms of like analysing it and theories and things like that, I've never really... I've got some theories and systems and things for understanding like doing stand-up and how to do that. And that relates to all sorts of things like how to come up with material and the general attitude you need to have. But also, I think that's pretty much it in terms of analysing. Maybe joke types, certain jokes, common joke structures, and the social dynamics of how you're supposed to respond when someone tells you a joke and things like that. But in terms of analysing, let's say, an episode of Fawlty Towers and being able to like break it down, I don't actually have any analytical tools at my disposal for that.
I guess it can kind of ruin it a bit, can't it? When you start formulating everything.
Well, whenever I talk about comedy or jokes, I always end up saying the same quote, which is that explaining a joke is like dissecting a frog. You can learn something from it, but the frog dies in the process.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And so,
that is absolutely true.
Whenever you discuss humor or talk about comedy or jokes, they instantly stop being funny because they're only funny when you instantly understand them. And this is the thing about the language, which makes it so difficult. Is in order to understand comedy, which you're watching on TV, or stand up on stage, or even just jokes that someone is telling you, you need to be able to get it instantly. And first of all, you need to know that someone is being humorous. You've got to be able to identify when it's actually happening.
Context.
And then understand the actual joke that's been said. So it's very, very difficult for language learners
Yes, because I guess the main element of it is surprise. Like you laugh because you were surprised by something in a way. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah,
something unexpected happened.
There's lots of theories about why we laugh and stuff, but certainly surprise is one of them. A sort of unexpected thing which takes you by surprise, or a different way of looking at a situation which kind of you didn't realise before, and that for some reason we laugh. But we also laugh for other things. We laugh to validate the things that we're hearing, and we laugh because we've experienced it too, and other things.
Yes, actually, I haven't read it yet, but I've been listening to a podcast about it. David Crystal's latest book. I think it's I'm shaming myself here. Something in the area of pragmatics. Have you got it? Yeah,
I've got it here. I think you're talking about this one, right?
Let's Talk. Yes, that's it. So this is sort of pragmatics, isn't it?
Let's Talk by David Crystal. It's called How English Conversation Works, and it's all about the pragmatics of conversations in English and how they actually work.
And he talks about how laughter is rarely used as a symptom of finding something funny. It's usually a social tool. Is that right? I'm trying to talk about
I don't remember that specific section of the book actually about laughter. I might be able to find it, but it does make sense. The idea that we don't just laugh because things are funny, and I often think that when I think of, let's say, non-native speakers or people who come from different cultures and they come to England and maybe they spend time with other English people. Let's say, I don't know, it could be anyone, like a Russian person or Japanese, maybe not a Japanese person, but let's say a Russian person, and they spend time with some English people, and English people are laughing all the time, but there's apparently no jokes being said or nothing obviously funny, but there's just lots of laughter. But we laugh for all these different reasons. We laugh to stop someone else feeling uncomfortable. We laugh because we are being self-deprecating. We laugh at ourselves, and lots of reasons. So yeah, laughter is not just used as a response to a joke. I can't find the section on laughter in the book, but
that's okay. Don't worry.
Never mind.
Let's all believe it's there.
Yes. Okay.
And I guess that person who's in England seeing that happening will, if they really think about it, realise that probably that happens when they're communicating in their first language too. That they laugh at non-funny things.
Yes.
That's the sort of social cohesion tool or something like that.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
But so now we talked about how the frog analogy is good. Analysing a joke, talking about types of jokes can kill the humour. So let's talk about types of jokes and kill the humour. So, I mean, I just went for some arbitrary I just thought of all the jokes that I kind of know.
Yes.
Like simple jokes,
Yeah.
And I kind of put them into sort of three categories, but this is probably more revealing of me than humour in general. There's classics.
Okay.
Like the ones that you just sort of think of as a joke, why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side?
Which I've never understood. I've never ever understood that joke. Why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side? I don't know what's funny about it. Either it's the worst joke ever, or it's the cleverest joke ever. I don't know. But what is funny about why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side?
Well,
is it a subversive, clever joke? Is this the thing, that it's a clever joke because it's subverting your expectations? You expect some funny answer, and the answer is simply, well, to get to the other side, of course. It's like the most postmodern clever joke ever, even though it's always the first joke that's given as an example of a joke.
Right. And that's kind of interesting, right? Because I guess it is postmodern. That's the vibe of it, right?
Yeah.
And it's old. It's a really old joke. It predates postmodernism, I'm assuming. Yeah.
But how is it that the oldest joke and the dictionary definition example of a joke is weirdly very complex and strange? Like, why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side? It's not funny. I don't see why that's funny. Yeah,
and you're right. It doesn't really give it doesn't really demonstrate the dynamics of what a joke is, a classic joke at least.
Yeah, because there's no wordplay.
There's no double meaning. There's no... Yeah. Okay, well, let's go for another example then. Which cheese... Oh, you might not know this one. What cheese is made backwards?
What cheese is made backwards? I don't know.
Edam.
Edam. Haha, made. Yeah.
Yeah, M-A-D-E, E-D-A-M.
Right. There's lots of cheese jokes. Do you know all the other ones?
No, go on.
Which cheese do you use to persuade a bear to come out of the woods?
I've got it, but I didn't know it. Yeah, it's Camembert, right?
Come on, bear.
Come on, bear.
Come on, bear.
Yeah, that's really good. Go on. If you got any more cheese jokes.
I do. I definitely have. Okay, what's the best cheese for hiding a small horse?
No, I can't get this one.
Mascarpone.
Awesome. Okay.
There's more, but I can't think of.
Yeah. It reminds me of the pirate jokes as well.
Right.
You know the pirate jokes?
Yeah, I don't remember them now.
Okay, so there's... All right, what did the pirate say on his 80th birthday?
I don't know.
Ah, matey.
Right. Because everything...
Arr, matey.
A pirate said, "Arr, matey," right.
They say "arr" a lot, right?
They go, "Arr." That's right.
Leads me to the next pirate joke. What's the pirate's favourite letter of the alphabet?
R.
Nah, the C for sure. Double joke.
Very good.
Yeah. Because most people would go for the R, right? So
yes.
Yeah. So these are the kind of classic jokes, right? They usually have this sort of call and response, and they're simple wordplay usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, at this stage, I guess we should keep looking wherever we are in this and think about our students and learners. And can you see anything so far that we've talked about that we could utilize for learners?
I think that the whole basic, the most common structure that I guess people need to know is the question, and you have to answer "I don't know" to the question.
That's an important rule, isn't it? Maybe even if you know. Even
if you know, I suppose.
Sometimes.
Yeah. You've got to just let the person tell the joke. You're just going to be like, "Okay, tell me the joke."
Yeah.
But yeah, why did the chicken cross the road? I don't know. And sometimes you repeat the joke. Why did the chicken cross the road? That's what you have to do. But the thing is, like, being able to identify when a joke is being said. Normally, someone will just kind of come up to you, right? How do people tell jokes? What do they actually do? They sort of come up to you, don't they, and sort of like tell you the joke.
It's an assault. Yeah. Well, I mean, I do it whenever I use humor a lot to avoid social awkwardness. I think that's why I'm kind of a humor-driven person, because I'm kind of awkward, and there's social awkwardness. So sometimes there's a gap in the conversation, and silence is hell.
But would you really jump into that gap with a joke? Would you be like, what did the librarian say? So, how was your weekend? Oh, pretty good. Yeah, not bad. Silence. And then, did you hear the one about the 3 holes? I don't know. I don't know if we do that. Like, just sort of clunkily
I do
put
that
them
a
in.
bit. Sometimes I do that. Like, I'm more like, do you know any good jokes? But what I'm asking is, I want to tell a joke.
Yeah,
I think
that, having considered it for a while, I think that the way that jokes work in normal social interaction is that we tend to have little informal joke-telling sessions where one person tells a joke and then you're sitting around and other people start thinking of jokes too. And that's when that's when jokes really happen. Otherwise, in our normal social interactions, jokes are the form of witty comments and puns and little sort of sarcastic moments in our everyday lives,
integrated into the general conversation, right?
Yes, and those are ones that we don't. Those are ones which we make up ourselves. That they're our own like creations. These little put downs or comments. And
a lot of them are spontaneous as well. This is sort of instinctive humor, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's much more difficult because a joke-telling session that has a script and you can follow that really easily.
Although the joke-telling session is difficult too because you've got to get it absolutely right. We've all been there where we've thought of a joke that's made us laugh at some point. Sorry about the noise. And then we've gone to tell it in front of other people and we've forgotten the joke in the middle of the joke. And that's just the worst thing. Or people haven't laughed or whatever. That is actually difficult. Whereas I think the thing about sort of reacting spontaneously in a social situation, it's more about just having an attitude, having the right kind of attitude. And it's more of for me, the attitude is that you're being generous and that you want people to have a good time around you. And so you're kind of lifting the mood. And that's a general attitude, I think. Because it's not about wordplay so much as just about finding observations about what's going on, or making fun of people, and just communicating with the people around you.
Yeah, so it's very much a sort of social bonding thing. Yeah, no, and the funniest times I've had, if I think about it and reflect, is when that sort of stuff is going on. When you have a situation when you have this sort of banter between someone or a group of people, and everyone's just being funny. But it's part of a directed conversation, so not directed conversation, a conversation with purpose. It's part of something else. The humor is integrated into something else.
Yes, I think so. So I guess for learners of English, they've got to be prepared in two ways. They've got to be prepared for sort of pre-written, already authored jokes, which someone shares with you, maybe on the spur of the moment, or maybe as part of a little joke telling session. And then they've got to just sort of be prepared for the general attitude of joking and laughing around, and being prepared to kind of operate in an ironic sort of way of thinking, where you don't necessarily mean what you're saying, and it's rather than about specific structured jokes, it's more about just a general frame of mind, the whatever it is, banter, or just being silly, or being sarcastic, or whatever. So several things.
Getting into the sort of mindset of the group of people you're in, and locking into that. Yeah. Well, the first one's easy to prepare for, and the second one, this just requires lots and lots of hanging out with people who do that, I suppose.
In the right situations as well. You've got to be ideally hanging around people in situations where they want to joke and they expect to joke. Sometimes in classrooms you find that people are a bit more serious, although I always really, really hope my students sort of take opportunities in class to be silly and creative. I think it can be really helpful in learning English, just to kind of switch off your editor and have fun. Yes, and thinking about classroom, I'm going to come back to transfer of humor like across cultures and stuff, because I think that's really interesting too. Like it's very cultural, it's very deep rooted in culture as well. Yeah. So when you're learning a language, and then there are lines there, we're going to come back to that quickly. Before that, I thought the second point you made about this sort of more spontaneous, more social sort of humor. I guess one way of getting like prepared for that is looking at the history of comedy, and both of us are quite into British comedy and sitcoms in particular. So I thought I've got like 4 categories. I'm obsessed with categorizing stuff, and I've got 4 here. I was thinking about looking very quickly about surreal comedy, because that's a major part of the British canon. Yes. The classic sitcom. Okay. What I call the cringies, which I'm assuming is your favorite one. Things maybe. That make you cringe. Okay, you did about 4 or 5 episodes on Alan Partridge. Okay, Alan Partridge. This is the first of many references to comedians and to TV shows and things like that. There may be a lot of new names in this episode. Luke and I talk about them. I'm going to leave a list in the description of the podcast episode with all the names we mentioned, so you can actually check them online so you can see what we're talking about. And I recommend checking out these people and comedians and shows, because it's good fun to watch some comedy in your second language, like English. So here we go. Alan Partridge is the first of many references. You did about 4 or 5 episodes on Alan Partridge, which was heaven for me. But I was thinking, oh my God, some of the students, the listeners must have been really challenged by that. I can tell you, yeah. Yeah, you got some feedback, I noticed. I think, did you get someone just wrote, please stop? It's possible. So I did, in fact, a total of 6 episodes about Alan Partridge. 6, was it? Okay. 3, and then about a year later, another 3. And most people really liked them, and I got lots of positive responses from people saying, this is amazing, please do more. That's fantastic. And then I also did get So Alan Partridge is quite polarizing, I think. It's a bit like Marmite, who either love it or hate it. A lot of people really love it, but then there's some people who can't handle it. And just, I guess, culturally, the type of humour and the situations that Alan finds himself in are just too awkward and too shame-filled for some people to deal with, and they just couldn't handle it. I got one email from someone who had played one of the recordings to their class of kids, and then and the whole class was shocked and surprised when at the end something happened. So it's the from the radio show where Alan interviews a child genius. Do you know that one?
Yeah, I remember your episode on that.
And the child genius is incredibly annoying. And Alan ends up slapping the child genius at the end. The child is not played by a child, it's played by a woman. And obviously the whole thing is made up and no one actually gets slapped. But this class full of kids were all shocked and convinced that this had really happened. And, I was so surprised because I just thought, how did this person not know that this was a made-up character and this is comedy, and that the so-called child was not actually played by a woman, because you can tell it's a woman. So I don't know, like in podcasting you may have noticed that there's always some people who just completely misunderstand or grab the wrong end of the stick and don't get it.
Yeah, of course. But that's just a numbers game. That's just going to happen. But yes,
Categories,
sorry, yes. But no, that's a really interesting point, because that was a funny episode. The cringies, and also, if we have time, which we might well not, satire. I think satire is a very important element of comedy. But very quickly, let's just dive in. The surreal... So what comes to your mind when you think of surreal British comedy? I've got three things on my list here. I wonder if they'll match.
Naturally, I think of Monty Python's Flying Circus. More recently, I think of the Mighty Boosh.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's not on my list. Yeah,
they're quite surreal. And in terms of other things, other surreal comedy, nothing else really comes to mind.
Yeah, Mighty Boosh is a great one. I hadn't thought of that. Very surreal. I've got The Young Ones.
Yeah, I thought that did flash through my mind, because there were moments where like the food on the shelf talks to each other and stuff like that.
Oh yes, yeah. You have people without a head running around for at least a minute.
Yeah.
And one thing that I when I was researching this episode, I hadn't listened to, and I really should have, and I listened to it yesterday. The Goon Show. 1940s, 1950s radio show. Yes.
Spike Milligan wrote all of it,
Yeah. And, I thought that Monty Python were the first guys to bring surreal humour to the mainstream. These 10 years earlier.
Absolutely. An extremely important, culturally important group of guys. Harry Seacombe, Spike Milligan, and... who's the third one? The great impressionist. Why can't I remember his name? Inspector Clouseau.
Oh God, yeah. Now I can't remember his name.
So this is that thing.
Sellers.
Peter Sellers, yeah. So very important, and like everyone listened to the Goons, and they were very, very subversive and crazy and weird, and they had a radio show that everyone would listen to, and they definitely inspired the Pythons. Like Spike Milligan was a huge influence on them. And I mean there may be some others, like maybe Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, but they weren't exactly surreal. They were slightly more satirical, although they did go a bit surreal and grotesque. And the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
What is
as well?
That? The Bonzo.
You don't know? You've never heard of the Bonzos?
The Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
Yeah, so Dada, do you know Dadaism?
Yes, yeah, of course, yeah. It's a sort of surrealism,
It's a surreal art movement that came about as a response to the madness of World War One, and it involved using a urinal as a piece of art. If we put this urinal in the art gallery, then that becomes art, and it's sort of like subverting and
it's the sort of stuff that makes people who hate modern art, basically. Because
kind of, but there's more of a sort of mischievous humour to that kind of Dadaism.
That's what I try to explain to people who don't get it. But it doesn't work.
So the Bonzos the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band were a musical group who took that aesthetic and applied it to being a band in the 60s in the UK. And Vivian Stanshall was the lead singer. Neil Innes was one of the songwriters.
Ah, okay. Innes.
He went on to work. He went to work with the Pythons with Eric Idle, and then they did the Ruttles.
Ruttles. Oh, that's why I know this name, because of this last podcast you did on the Beatles.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Exactly. So they are actually a very important group. They're in one of the Beatles films in the Magical Mystery Tour. The Bonzos turn up and sing one of their songs on stage.
Okay.
And actually a very important bridge between surreal comedy and British music. Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, surrealism in comedy. Have you ever integrated this sort of stuff into any lessons before? Surrealism for the purposes of learning English.
Surrealism. I'm not sure about surrealism. Because it's a bit odd. Obviously, it's surreal. But what I have done is often used comedy as the basis of lessons that I've done, and I went through a phase of writing lesson plans, and so okay. There's two things. One of them is showing comedy in class and using it for learning English, which is actually a punishing thing to do for everybody, because it's punishing for the students because they can't understand it, and it's punishing for the teacher because nobody laughs. And normally, if I've done it, it's like DVD time Friday afternoon, and then I show them the most difficult, most challenging thing ever, and because they don't laugh, I end up really disappointed. So horrible thing to do, really.
You have to dissect the frog, I guess, when that happens.
Yeah, that's right. And it means that the teacher does too much talking and the students are just sitting there like that. There's that. And then there's using certain comedy techniques in lessons. So that's, a lot of people do that anyway without being comedian or anything. But it involves things like role plays and setting up funny role plays and letting the students have fun with that. But also certain sort of comedy games that I used to play when I was sort of preparing to do stand-up. I used to sort of take part in a workshop with other comedians.
Can you give me an example of a comedy game? Does anything come to mind?
So one of them is called the press conference, and that's where you have your group of students, and one person goes up at the front, and they're given a random ministry to be in charge of. So, like when I was doing my workshop, I was the minister for... so my friend was the minister for sticks, and I ended up being the minister for Old World monkeys versus New World monkeys. Very weird. So you have to go up and imagine you're talking to the press, and you are an expert in this particular field. And so all the people in the group ask you challenging questions, and you've got to respond to them. And it's very, very stupid and funny, and it ends up sort of producing some pretty odd and funny responses.
There you go. I think this answers the other question. You have introduced surrealism as a tool for learning a language. Yeah.
Well, the idea is in coming up with ideas, that you switch off your editor, which I mentioned before, but this is a thing that I've mentioned lots of times, and it's basically the idea that in order to come up with funny ideas, you've got to kind of switch off that part of your brain which is telling you to stop and telling you shouldn't be doing that because it's socially not right and you're going to make a fool of yourself. And if you switch that off completely and ignore it, then it allows a lot of comedy ideas to actually come through. And telling the students to do that and helping them practice doing it allowed them to come up with some pretty funny things.
That's really cool. And I can see another benefit of that is that, you're giving them a framework where they're allowed to be ridiculous. So there's more flow going on, I suppose, once they get into it. And that's going to just make you more creative when in English, right? Because the boundaries have been expanded a little bit.
And also I understand that there are theories, about the idea that in learning languages we very easily get restricted, and certain restricting factors can have a serious limiting effect on your ability to acquire language. And breaking away all of those sort of limitations until people feel totally comfortable and at ease is a really important part of helping people to sort of get the best out of their time while practicing. And so these sorts of comedy games, the idea is they sort of liberate people from social sort of constructs, which sort of mean that they feel self-conscious or uncomfortable. You could get people out of themselves completely and into a place where they can really express themselves without being defensive, and then it's a much healthier space for learning English, where ultimately you want people to experiment and make mistakes and so on.
That's really cool. And that's it. The weirder the setup is, I suppose the more liberating it is, because you're not obliged to, you can't make it match reality, so you just have to be creative with it. It doesn't have to make sense. That's another thing that I can tell my students sometimes is like, I don't actually care what you're saying. I don't care what your opinion is. You don't have to be right and wrong, because so many of those speaking activities that we do with our students, they end up being sort of quite difficult things to talk about because you want to be right or wrong, or you want to work out what you really think about this subject while you're describing it. But when you take away all those things, suddenly people are liberated to say anything. And it doesn't even have to be correct, or, I mean, hopefully they're making it linguistically correct, but it doesn't have to make sort of sense really beyond just the exercise they're doing at the time. It reminds me a bit of, the way actors train sometimes. And sometimes they just train not by like reciting something, but they just go, whatever they do. It's just sort of mindless, like training. It's letting one thing go and cultivating something else, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's not sort of, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's just like people just saying whatever.
No, I didn't mean it was mindless, but
mindless garbling of whatever. But I mean
in the sense of the purpose of the exercise can be comparable, because it's letting the mind go to some extent. Yeah,
that's right. Not feeling the pressure to to be right. Like whenever someone writes an essay for whatever it is, IELTS, and it's got to be for and against, that sometimes the hardest thing, the thing that stops people, is working out what they really think or what the right answer is. But it doesn't matter. It's all about just how you construct your discourse. This is the thing.
They don't care what you think. Okay, I like this surrealism. And also I wanted to turn it around a little bit and get you to think about your own language learning experience. Your second language is French, isn't it?
Yeah. That's right.
So have you come across any weird French comedy that helped you learn anything? I'm thinking surreal, like the surreal category here. We're still in this category. That made you, that gave you some revelations, that made you understand some certain things.
No, none at all.
Okay, all right.
I haven't, because I can't. I find it impenetrable, French comedy,
right?
Because for the same reason that our learners probably do. I don't really understand it. I don't always get the jokes, and sometimes I do get the jokes, and then I'm disappointed because I'm like, really, that's the joke? Really, that's it?
Yeah, it's cultural, isn't it?
And I'm disappointed because culturally, actually, French and English humour is really quite different, and what you often get in French comedy films is quite broad comedy. It's quite broad stuff, and I think for Brits we consider ourselves to be the connoisseurs of comedy, right?
Subtleties and nuance. And,
exactly.
Irony.
We like I've noticed when presenting comedy shows to learners of English and explaining them, in many cases, they're better described and I think better consumed as tragedies or character pieces or something like that. That you shouldn't even present them as comedy. Like The Office is a terrible tragedy about a guy who wastes his opportunities, and an egomaniac running out of control in an office.
Yeah.
It's not really humorous. It's more.
Oh, it gets quite dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I like about the cringies. It's
Partridge as well is.
Yeah.
Partridge is very tragic. There are certain moments where it's like very dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, what was I saying? So yeah, French and English comedy. French comedy sometimes I find, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but I find it a little bit sort of, I don't know, it's not the same. Often when you watch a French movie, there's always a scene, and it's the comedy scene, and it's a bunch of people sitting around a table eating, and they have a big argument, and it's like everyone just gets angry,
and that's funny.
It's the funniness is in watching people lose their temper.
I find that funny sometimes.
And insulting. It's funny, but it's always the same thing. It's just like one character loses his temper and insults people in a very funny French way.
That reminds me of the next category a bit, but no, I'm gonna bring one thing up before we go into that. But we're gonna hold that thought about the French,
okay.
the being angry and disagreements. But sorry,
sure, okay. I was just going to add, but there are other things like some graphic novels I've found to be more useful than actual TV or film stuff. I find it's the right thing for me.
This is out of the realm of comedy. We're looking at...
They're very funny, funny graphic novels, which I prefer to use for working on my French than actual TV and film.
When I was learning Turkish more, as my second language... Asterix and Tintin were just so good. The best. Yeah, best way to learn. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
You got the visuals. It's spoken language, so you have this conversational tone, and there's so many cues. And if you get bored, you can just look at the nice pictures.
And all of that spoken language is written, so you can actually see how it's spelled speak. And all that stuff, and how you actually see how people speak. Exactly. That's what I like about it. Direct speech. Unlike reading a novel where it's literary in style, graphic novels, it's exactly how people actually speak, which is great. It's perfect.
Or in the case of Tintin, exactly how people spoke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a bit old school. But before we move on to the next category, although everything's merging together anyway, and that's great. We're going off piste, and that's always a good sign. But yeah, a couple of like little techniques. So if we have any listeners who want to be funny in English, I was listening through all the stuff and watching things, and I noticed a couple of things that are really, really prevalent in surreal comedy, at least, and twisting well-known phrases. Like from the Goon Show, we got they buried the black box 10 feet above the ground. This is kind of absurd. Makes me think twice. From the Young Ones, two of my favourite Young Ones jokes. You got Neil, who's standing next to a spade, and he just looks at the spade and goes, "You're a spade. I've always called you that." And it's playing on the proverb, right? He calls the spade a spade. Right.
Of course.
And there's another spade-based Young Ones jokes when he's digging a grave. I don't know why. It's just weird. Old woman comes up to him and says, "Do you dig graves?" And he says, "Yeah, they're all right. They're all right." So, and there's like As Much Gold as I Can Eat from Monty Python's Life of Brian. And this is all just sort of playing with idioms and phrases and proverbs, but just changing something in them.
Yes, I noticed that. So I've done episodes about the best jokes from the Edinburgh Fringe and stuff like that. I've sort of did them every year until COVID came along. And I noticed that the jokes and these are real stand-up jokes, not just jokes in the ether, but ones that people have written for their stand-up shows. A lot of them were sort of famous or well-known sayings or phrases which had then been recontextualized or changed in some way. Conjunctivitis.com, there's a site for sore eyes.
That's good. That's
it's like a famous phrase, there's a site for sore eyes, but then repurposed. And it's often because the whole phrase, it's basically a pun, but instead of being a pun on one word, it's a pun on the entire phrase. And there's lots of others. I can't remember them all now.
You see it in marketing a lot. One thing I notice when I come back to England is like how many adverts there are everywhere. But they do this all the time. They change idioms around, or puns are everywhere in marketing. Yeah.
For some reason we love puns, and advertisers have worked out that if you put a pun into a commercial, then people will be completely defenseless against it.
Yeah. Well, it seems to work because they keep doing it.
That's right. Comparethemeerkat.com and so on. Do you know about Compare the Meerkat?
No.
So there's a service called comparethemarket.com. There's lots of these. There's Go Compare and Compare this, Compare that. And they're price comparison websites. And comparethemarket.com decided to advertise itself with meerkats. You know what meerkats are?
Well, I got some image in my head. They're a sort of wild cat, right?
They're sort of like prairie dogs, but they are sort of quite long and slim, and they stand on their hind legs and look around.
Ah, those guys, yeah.
Meerkats, right? And so they totally changed their advertising campaign and decided to use these cute, fluffy meerkats, and they changed it to comparethemeerkat.com.
Market, meerkat.
Compare the market, compare the meerkat.
Okay.
And this was so successful that it almost became like a franchise. And the Compare the Meerkats were on TV for like a decade or something like that. Absolute madness. But just, I don't know, maybe Compare the Market, Compare the Meerkat was so effective that they kept going with it.
Also, meerkats are cute. So they're quite a good sort of symbol for your brand there, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it helped people remember it.
Okay. Nice. So puns, surreal comedy, liberating yourself by just being able to be a bit weird in the classroom or when you're learning English, putting on the weirdo hat. I'm simplifying things really grossly, but we have a little time, so there. Okay, I wanted to look at the classic sitcoms, and I thought it could be quite a fun little game if I read you a situation, and you tell me which sitcom it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Downtrodden, post-war, out-of-work comedian plays exaggerated version of himself.
It's what's his name? Hancock. Hancock's Half
That's
Hour.
the one. Yeah, Tony Hancock. Okay.
Tony Hancock.
Yeah. A sex-obsessed 20-something woman and a sex-obsessed 20-something gay man live together and talk about getting laid all the time.
Gimme, gimme, gimme.
Gimme, gimme, gimme. Excellent. 2 points. Middle-class woman obsessed with being upper-class bosses her husband around to achieve that goal. He just wants to chill.
It's Keeping Up Appearances.
Excellent. Back of the net. Two brothers in South London have to look after themselves after their mother dies. You've already got this, haven't you? So they come up with all sorts of ways to get rich, selling illegal and poor quality goods.
Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah, excellent. Historical social climber always gets downtrodden by those above him and bullies those below him.
Blackadder.
Nice. Okay, psychotic hotel owner. I don't need to say anything else.
Fawlty Towers.
Yeah. Anger issues man retires, gets more angry.
I don't believe it. It's what was that? 1 Foot in the Grave.
Nice. 10 out of 10. Not that there were 10. I didn't count them. Yeah, fantastic. So sitcoms, what makes sitcoms funny? This is like, because these are the biggest kind of category of broadcast comedy, and I mean, some of them are terrible. Like some of the ones I put up there, I couldn't watch them. Keeping Up Appearances, Gimme, Gimme, Gimme. What makes them funny? What do you think?
I think normally what makes a sitcom funny is watching a person fail. I think that's the thing, that it's someone, not that it seems that the equation or recipe is take a person who is unaware of themselves. They don't know how terrible they are for whatever reason. They're unaware of it, and then they go through their day and everything goes wrong because they don't know that they're terrible. And normally they've got ambitions above their station. So if you've got Fawlty Towers, Basil Fawlty is a snob, and he looks down on people who he considers below him, and he sort of panders to people who are upper class. And, this is often his undoing. If he treated everyone fairly and well, instead of, categorizing everyone by class, then he'd probably be a lot more successful as a person.
Yeah. This is the same kind of setup as Blackadder and Keeping Up Appearances too, I suppose, among many others. Blackadder's more of he's not worried about prestige, he's just worried about getting rich and having it all.
I think the difference is that with Fawlty Towers and Keeping Up Appearances, they are sort of anti-heroes because they're generally bad. They generally are doing the wrong thing. Whereas with Blackadder, it's slightly different because it's set during, historical times. He becomes a modern man in the past, and we associate with him because he's essentially a modern person with a modern outlook, surrounded by idiots from history. And I think that's where the humour comes in. He's tired and fed up with how stupid and idiotic history is, and he attempts to kind of basically, get rich, squashing people below him and doing whatever it takes to kind of get rich, and it often goes wrong. But I find Blackadder to be a little bit different because it's not like he is his shortcomings usually get the better of him. It's more of his situation, the fact he's surrounded by idiots on all sides.
It's not always his fault, is it?
I don't think so. I think
unlucky.
It's normally it's just because everyone else is an idiot. That's mainly the single joke of Blackadder, is that take a modern man, put him in the past, and look, everyone's an idiot.
Yeah,
and it works really, really well.
That's true.
But the main the main thing. Yeah, go on. Sorry,
I was just going to use the phrase "victim of circumstances." It felt apt there.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe
victim of circumstances.
But the main model is like someone who doesn't realize how bad they are, who gets everything wrong, and they've got ambitions above their station, but they fail at the end. That's most of the sitcoms are like that.
That's true. We get that with the cringies as well. Let's merge these categories because we're also short on time. Yeah, like Alan Partridge is very much that. The Office is like that.
Yes.
I got some other notes, things like The Thick of It, Peep Show, Phoenix Nights, but they're a bit more complex, I think.
They're fantastic though. I think they're better. The further away from the main list that you've got there, I think the better they get. Sort of Peep Show is just a stunning show, but I still think it sort of holds up the idea that these are people who are ultimately failures because they don't realise how bad they are. I think that's true for Peep Show. I would say
certainly with Jeremy. Yeah,
and what's the other one's called?
Well, I got Phoenix Nights here.
Mark. Yeah, Phoenix Nights. No, Phoenix Nights. Yeah, is a bit different.
We really relate to the people in Phoenix Nights, I think, and they become quite endearing as time goes on. Yeah, and The Thick of It is just pure chaos from beginning to end. I think we can't apply. Can you apply any sort of theory to The Thick of It at all?
Yes, it's satire, isn't it? Because it's ultimately commenting on the state of politics and the way it works.
Yeah, and that does fall into our fourth category. We have very little time left, but I wanted to ask you, talking of satire, have you heard of A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Children of Poor People from being a burthen to their parents or country and for making them beneficial to the public?
No.
Okay. I think this is one of the earliest examples of satire as comedy. Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels, probably his most famous work. This was during the long occupation of Ireland by the British, and we don't have to go into the details of that, but there was a lot of like famine, not enough food going around, and the British were treating a lot of the people in Ireland very, very, very badly. And Swift decided to satirize how they were treating them and how they were being kind of sort of downtrodden by taking what their sort of the way they speak and the way they discuss these issues and taking it a few steps further to an extreme. And I quote the main part of this: "A young, healthy child, well nursed, is, at a year old, a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roasted, baked, or boiled, and I make no doubt that it will equally serve a fricassee or a ragout." So, he's suggesting that solving the problem is right in front of everyone's eyes. You just eat the kids. And he does this for ages. It's paragraphs long. It's sustained.
Wow.
Yeah, it's sustained. And you start reading it, you don't realize it's satire, and he starts preambling. So it seems that satirical comedy and political satire in particular has been around for a long time, and we still see it a lot at the moment. What does anything come to mind when we're in this area?
Yeah, definitely. I always think of the work of Chris Morris and shows like the Day to Day and Brass Eye, which were, I guess they were satire. I mean, they were also very surreal and weird, but a lot of the time they were making fun of the way that TV works and the way that, like, the conventions of news shows and the arrogance and the bombasticness of TV news and the overconfidence of it and so on, and the kind of knee-jerk reactions that are expressed on TV. Yeah, I do think of Chris Morris, but also think of Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, just kind of making fun of upper class people or general society. Yeah, I think I'm very proud of a lot of our satire and satirical comedy. I think it's a really good thing, and it should be like that. It should be intelligent and used to criticize things.
Yes, I think it's a valuable part of a democratic society, this sort of ability to laugh. And I think this sort of sense of humor is vital for politicians too. Now, I'm treading on very dangerous ground here, but I think politicians with a sense of humor tend to do well. Funny people. Let's not name many names, but we can all think we could totally think we know. Yeah.
I think we know who you're talking about.
Sort of, yes. No, never. Yes, and this particular person probably became quite famous in the public conscious for the first time when he appeared on a political satire show called Have I Got News for You?
We should probably say who we're talking about. We're talking about
Bojo.
We're talking about Boris Johnson here, listeners, just in case that wasn't clear. That yes, Boris Johnson, I mean, he didn't start out as a politician. He started out as a journalist, and he also was quite known because he was a bit unconventional with his crazy hair and it's Boris, hurrah, and all that. He was invited to present or to host a comedy show on TV once or twice, I think.
I think he went on twice, yeah.
It was a great platform for him because he was very, very funny. And then he got into politics and he ran for Mayor of London and he won. And it's sort of like, his initial PR for the country, his introduction to him was that he was some sort of clever, like incredibly intelligent buffoon. Like he was amazingly intelligent and brilliant, but also with this wonderful sense of humor. And during the Olympics, he did that thing where he went down a
zip wire,
but he got stuck and he was hanging in the air with these flags. And he's lovable Boris, ha ha ha, just but actually he's used his sense of humor to kind of gain people's approval, but actually, there's a much more sinister sort of mind at work there behind all of that.
It's a wonderfully useful mask, I think, for him. He seems harmless. He seems harmless, and I guess that's the thing. When you seem harmless, you're in a better position to do more harm.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think it's a bit of a negative way to end the thing. So very quickly, if you've got a couple of minutes, just really quickly, I want to talk about how, as for learners, how... Oh, by the way, anyone listening, anyone who's here still... I'm going to make a list of all, because we've name dropped. We've mentioned a lot of different people, a lot of different shows. I'm going to make a list of these in the description of the podcast so you can check out and understand what the hell we're talking about, because we did get off on a tangent from time to time. But yes, learners, when you're learning a language, does sort of understanding and adopting the sort of humor from the culture of that language help? Should you have to do it? Can you integrate your own culture and your own humor into a second language like English? Where's the line here?
I would say actually that I would actually avoid categorizing people's humor by where they come from.
Oh, that's good.
Actually, because so if you're going out into the world, you're socializing with people, I would say that the basic position that you should take is not how to be funny or not funny, but how to be generous, how to be warm, how to be friendly, and how to be fun. Rather than how to be funny. Because for me, being funny is just a means to achieve those other things. That I use humor in order to build relationships with people, in order to keep things light and fun and not too serious. And that's what humor is for me. So think of it as a tool to achieve those other things. And you should be looking to, be nice and be friendly and be good fun rather than just be funny. So again, it's about the attitude. And I would say if you have the attitude of like being willing to generally look at the funny side of things with other people, then that's probably going to be a good way to socialize and build relationships with them. So rather than just saying, oh, I'm with English people, I have to be sarcastic, or I'm with American people, so I have to throw my hands in the air a lot, or whatever it is, I would say generally for everyone, just be open and ready to laugh at things and not too judgmental, and just willing to make a connection with the person you're talking to, and that'll work the best. I mean, that always works. Mm-hmm. Just in my experiences of traveling and meeting people from around the world, certain things are just universal, and that is just a willingness to have fun and see the lighter side of things. So that's what I would suggest people take away, is just, the importance of having fun with people when you socialize.
That is so valuable. I couldn't think of a better takeaway from that. Yeah, and being funny is not the aim. Being funny is just something that might happen when you're getting on well with someone.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
That's so cool. Yeah, well, brilliant. I'm just going to leave that there then. No better place to leave it. Have you got any final comments, or do you want to tell a joke?
I don't know if I want to tell a joke. I've got various books on my bookshelves here that contain jokes, including this. This is one of my favourite ones.
Oh, hang on, let me move my screen.
It's called The Naked Jape.
The Naked
by
Jape.
Jimmy Carr and Lucy Greaves, uncovering the hidden world of jokes. And it's about humour, about jokes, and it also contains lots of jokes. So let's see if I can find something good. Okay, I've got one for you. This is Tommy Cooper.
Oh, brilliant.
It's a doctor joke.
Okay.
So, doctor, my arm is broken in 3 places. And the doctor says, well, just stay out of those places.
Okay, genius.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's a good one. Okay, and I'm going to leave that book in the show notes too. Finally, do you want to mention anything that you do? We know you've got this podcast, the Luke's English podcast.
Yeah, that's it. Luke's English Podcast. People can find it wherever they get their podcasts. They can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Luke's English Podcast on YouTube. And there's my premium subscription. I did a series a while ago, which was all about homophones. And it's full of jokes, absolutely full from start to finish, of lots and lots of jokes. And lots of other series I've done on the premium side of things. So they can go to teacherluke.co.uk/premium info if they'd like to find out about that.
Cool. And you have an app, right?
I have an app as well, the Luke's English Podcast app. You can just go to the App Store, download it free on your phone. You can get the entire episode archive, plus lots of bonus extras. The Luke's English Podcast app.
Brilliant. Yeah, that was a flawless plug. Excellent. Cool. Well, then, thanks so much, Luke. Thanks for your time today. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
And the insight.
Okay. Yes, no, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation again.
Cool.
Have a nice day.
You too. See you later.
Bye.
Stop recording.
I'll stop recording.